we must look beyond the surface to uncover the nature of femininity, for it is not a singular, static form. Femininity, much like masculinity, is shaped by the tensions of nature, culture, and psychology. Yet there exists a state, an immaturity of sorts, in the feminine psyche, one that has been hidden beneath layers of societal expectation and moralistic narratives. This immaturity is not simply a youthful phase, nor an inevitable aspect of a woman's development. It is a psychological condition that reflects a deeper, often unconscious struggle within the feminine soul. The notion of immaturity and femininity cannot be reduced to one-dimensional stereotypes. It is not merely the lack of growth in terms of physical or emotional development, but rather the absence of psychological integration and wholeness. Immature femininity, as described by thinkers like Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, reflects an incomplete process of individuation, the ability to realize and actualize one's true self. The process of becoming an integrated, whole individual, according to Jung, requires an understanding and acceptance of the unconscious aspects of the self. This includes embracing both the light and dark forces that lie within. When it comes to femininity, this means that the mature woman is able to integrate the nurturing, intuitive qualities traditionally associated with femininity, while also embracing the strength, assertiveness, and even the darker elements of the psyche, qualities that have long been repressed in women. For Jung, the anima represents the unconscious feminine aspect of the psyche, which both men and women must reconcile in order to achieve wholeness. The immature woman, however, is often unable to reconcile these polarities within herself. She might repress her assertive or aggressive qualities in favor of a more passive, agreeable nature, which society encourages. Or, conversely, she may swing to the extreme, embracing traits like manipulation or seduction as a means of gaining power. The lack of balance between these forces creates a fragmented psyche, where the woman's sense of identity is at odds with her deeper, more authentic self. Carl Jung often spoke of the shadow, the unconscious and repressed parts of the psyche that one seeks to deny. For many women, their shadow contains the aspects of their femininity that have been deemed undesirable by societal standards, their aggression, anger, and independence. The immature woman, in her fear of these qualities, suppresses them, leaving her unable to fully realize the power of the mature feminine. In Freud's work, we also encounter the notion of an unresolved Oedipal complex, which can manifest in the psyche of a young girl and influence her development into adulthood. Freud posited that the Oedipus complex, in which a child experiences unconscious desires for the opposite sex parent, is central to the development of sexual identity and the capacity for mature relationships. However, if the girl fails to resolve her feelings toward her father and mother, if she cannot integrate her sense of autonomy and individuality from both of them, she may remain psychologically stunted, unable to claim her own voice or identity outside of those relationships. Her desire for love and approval from male figures may dominate, causing her to seek validation through external sources rather than discovering her own self-worth. This unresolved tension is part of the larger narrative of immature femininity, one in which the woman's sense of self is shaped by external forces, whether that be the gaze of others or societal expectations of what femininity should look like. Women who remain stuck in this immature phase may find themselves trapped in patterns of seeking approval, constantly trying to fit themselves into predefined roles rather than creating their own sense of self. The core issue here is that immature femininity often arises from a disconnection between the inner, authentic self and the external self that society demands. A woman may wear the mask of the dutiful mother, the loving partner, or the beautiful, seductive figure, but underneath, she may feel lost, disconnected from her true desires and potential. This fragmented identity leads to a deep sense of dissatisfaction and emotional instability. The woman may oscillate between extremes, overly nurturing and self-sacrificing on one end, and manipulative or passive-aggressive on the other. She may lack the emotional resilience to deal with the complexities of adult life, and thus she finds herself caught in a perpetual state of adolescent rebellion or confusion. Moreover, this immaturity is not simply about personal development. It is also a reaction to a world that expects women to remain confined to narrow boundaries. The world demands that women embody roles of submission, care, and nurturing without encouraging them to explore their own autonomy and power. These roles, which may appear empowering at first glance, often strip women of the opportunity to fully experience the depth of their own psyche and potential. The good girl persona that society encourages is an archetype that suppresses the very qualities of strength and independence that are necessary for psychological maturity. One of the most telling characteristics of immature femininity is the deep reliance on external validation. The immature woman may struggle to define herself without the reflection of others. Her sense of worth becomes contingent on the approval of the people around her, particularly men. She may base her entire self-concept on her ability to please, to be adored, or to be needed. This type of behavior is deeply ingrained, often from childhood, as she is taught to be pleasing, kind, and accommodating, yet not assertive or self-defining. This dependence on others for self-worth also leads to a form of manipulation. The immature woman may engage in passive-aggressive behaviors, using indirect methods to gain attention, affection, or power. Rather than directly expressing her needs or desires, she may resort to subtle tactics, emotional manipulation, sulking, guilt-tripping, in an attempt to control her environment and the people around her. This manipulative behavior, while sometimes effective in the short term, leads to a deeper emotional disconnect and a failure to engage in authentic, mature relationships. However, this dynamic is not the result of inherent weakness, but a symptom of societal and psychological pressures that stifle the woman's ability to grow. She has not been given the tools or the permission to embrace her full range of potential as a human being. It is not until she confronts the unconscious forces that shape her identity and begins to integrate the more shadowy aspects of her psyche that she can begin to mature. In the end, the immature woman is a woman in conflict with herself. She is pulled in many directions, unable to reconcile the expectations of others with her own desires and needs. Her psyche is fragmented, and she must find a way to become whole. To move beyond immaturity, to evolve into a more complete and integrated self, is not an easy task. The journey requires the woman to confront the very aspects of herself that she has long rejected or feared. It is, in the words of Carl Jung, an undertaking of individuation, the process of integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self to become a whole person. For the immature woman, this means not only reconciling her contradictions, but also stepping into the fullness of her power, autonomy, and authentic selfhood. The path to maturity begins with a confrontation with the shadow, those parts of the self that have been suppressed or denied. For many women, the shadow contains traits traditionally seen as masculine: assertiveness, aggression, independence, and even a certain ruthlessness. These are qualities that have historically been either undervalued or even vilified in women. But the truth is that to be fully human, one must embrace both the nurturing, receptive aspects of femininity and the assertive, active qualities that make up the complete spectrum of psychological experience. Jung's idea of the anima, the unconscious feminine counterpart within both men and women, plays a crucial role in this process. For women, the anima represents the deep well of feminine wisdom, intuition, and power that lies beneath the surface of the conscious personality. However, the immature woman may struggle to access this inner wisdom, as it is buried beneath layers of cultural conditioning and personal insecurity. The immature feminine cannot truly know herself unless she makes the conscious decision to turn inward, to face the shadow, and to reclaim those parts of herself that have been deemed undesirable. Yet reclaiming the shadow is not a simple process. It is a painful, sometimes frightening task to face the parts of oneself that have been repressed. The fear of becoming too strong, too independent, too difficult often keeps many women trapped in the role of the passive, dependent, and pleasing figure. But in reality, this is not the true nature of femininity. The deep, archetypal power that resides within every woman is not one of weakness or submission. It is one of strength, resilience, and vitality. By embracing the shadow, a woman begins to rediscover the parts of herself that she has been afraid to claim, the bold, assertive, and even rebellious aspects that are essential to her wholeness. As Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The process of becoming requires us to shed the roles and identities that no longer serve us and to step into the unknown territory of our own potential. The immature woman, much like any individual caught in an incomplete development, will have to learn to let go of the personas she has been taught to adopt. It may mean relinquishing the role of the ever-pleasing, self-sacrificial figure and allowing herself to be seen, not as a role, but as a full, dynamic human being. Once the woman has begun to integrate her shadow, the next step in her maturation process involves embracing her independence. It is crucial to understand that independence here does not mean rejecting relationships or abandoning community. Rather, it means that a woman must learn to define herself from within, rather than relying on others to validate her existence. An immature woman may constantly seek validation from external sources, whether from her partner, her friends, or society at large. She looks for affirmation of her worth in the gaze of others. Yet, this external validation can never provide the lasting fulfillment or self-assurance that comes from within. The mature woman, in contrast, has the courage to trust herself. She no longer needs to conform to the expectations of those around her. She understands that her worth is not dependent on her ability to please or appease others. She knows that her identity comes from within, and it is shaped by her values, her experiences, and her unique vision of the world. In essence, the mature woman has cultivated an internal sense of autonomy, a sense that she is complete, regardless of external circumstances. Freud's theories of development also offer insight into this journey. In particular, the concept of psychosexual stages and the resolution of the Oedipus complex provides a framework for understanding the development of the feminine psyche. Freud's view of the Oedipus complex suggests that a girl's identification with her mother and father plays a pivotal role in her psychological development. A mature resolution of this complex allows a woman to claim her individuality, free from the need to compete with her mother or seek approval from her father. This ability to individuate, emotionally and psychologically, marks the transition from immaturity to maturity. Yet this process of individuation is not linear. There will be moments when the immature aspects of femininity rise to the surface, moments of fear, self-doubt, or emotional manipulation. But these moments, rather than being a sign of failure, should be seen as opportunities for growth. The path to maturity requires constant self-reflection, a willingness to embrace discomfort, and a deep commitment to self-actualization, the process of becoming the fullest expression of oneself. In this way, the mature woman embodies what is often referred to in psychological terms as the integrated self. She is not defined by societal roles or external expectations, but by an inner knowing of who she truly is. She embraces both her light and shadow, her nurturing and assertive qualities, her vulnerabilities and strengths. This integration allows her to step into her full potential, free from the constraints of outdated societal constructs and oppressive gender roles. Moreover, the mature feminine psyche is not one of passivity, but one of engagement with the world in a dynamic, transformative way. She becomes a force of creation, capable of nurturing and shaping her environment with wisdom and power. Her relationships, whether personal or professional, are grounded in authenticity, empathy, and mutual respect. She no longer relies on manipulation or passive aggression to assert her needs. Rather, she expresses her desires openly and assertively, and is capable of engaging in deep, meaningful dialogue with others. As Nietzsche once said, "Become who you are." This is not a simple mantra, but a call to action, an invitation to shed the layers of conditioning, societal expectation, and unconscious limitation that keep us from realizing our true potential. The journey toward maturity for the woman is one of radical self-honesty, psychological integration, and inner strength. The immature feminine, when she chooses to grow, can transform into a powerful force, a woman who is whole, empowered, and unafraid to live life on her own terms. This journey is not one of perfection, but of continuous growth, learning, and reclamation of the self. In the end, it is not the passing of time that brings maturity, but the courage to face the complexities of the soul and to integrate all aspects of the self, both the light and the dark, the nurturing and the fierce, the submissive and the sovereign.